Our next guest will explore the topic of how does San Diego County grow, particularly given the struggle between those who see a need for housing and respond to that, and those who see the need to say, no, there's enough here. Taking the perspective of the real estate interests, and from that point of view, here in San Diego County is Nathan Moeder, who comes from the London Group. Welcome to the show, Nathan. Can you tell us what the London Group is and what do you do?
Well, sure. Well, first, I guess my opinions are not related to real estate interests because by nature we're economists. And so
analysis,
we do
then.
a lot of analysis, and not only for real estate, but any kind of economic issues. So we do a lot of market analysis, financial planning for real estate developers, but also for public agencies and cities in helping them craft their plans and things like that for the future.
Okay, and you're based out of?
Downtown San Diego and Carlsbad.
Okay. Can you set the stage for us of what we are looking at here with the housing situation? The general sentiment from that people like me have is that we have way too many people, not nearly enough houses to go around, and a growing resentment on the parts of some quarters to say, we don't want any more houses, any more traffic, any more people. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the result of all that is that we have a very expensive housing market. And unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And I don't think we'll ever build enough housings at the pace we need to put a dent in housing prices. I think it's something that's going to last for quite some time that we have to get used to and try to identify more housing opportunities for people. Because really what it's going to end up is it's a threat to our economy. It's a threat to the middle class now. Before it was just the very low income and the moderate income individuals. But now with how expensive prices are, not only for single family homes, but for rents now for families, we're talking about the middle class, which is if you're a combined income and you're a nurse and a firefighter, those are the people that are getting squeezed right now. And and then we're talking about just moderate professionals, entry-level professionals that can't afford to live in San Diego. And so we're seeing that squeeze, and it's time that we start having a conversation about making housing affordable, not just the affordable housing, because we really have to address that middle class, which is a backbone to our economy too, locally.
Isn't it true, though, that regardless of what price level a piece of housing is added, you're in effect increasing the whole housing stock and presumably alleviating some piece of that pressure?
No, I don't think you're alleviating any pressure. I mean, right now we're just growing by natural increase.
That's the population.
Right, yes.
But anytime, it doesn't, what I'm wondering is, does it really matter whether I add a median priced house at what, $450,000, $500,000
Yes.
now, or I add a $900,000 house, I've still increased the housing stock by one.
Yes, you have.
So if a developer comes along and says, I want to build 1,000 really expensive houses, isn't that a net plus for trying to pull more people into homes someplace down the line?
Yeah, that's definitely a plus, because you've got the move-up market. What you're describing there is we have to get, and right now people are stuck. I mean, that's one of the problems with the housing problem right now is what we call house hoarding, which is people are holding on to their homes, especially those that are retired. That are sitting on a $1 million home or something, and it's a 5-bedroom home. They live there by themselves, and their kids are moved out, but they don't have anywhere to go. There's nothing comparable, so they're sitting there.
Why are they doing that? Is
Right.
it partly Prop 13 and the fear of having to pay more property tax if you buy a new house, or?
Prop 13, but really from what I've heard is that there's nothing that they can downsize to. So if you're in Carlsbad or Encinitas and you still want to live there and you want to downsize into a smaller home, they said, my goodness, all the new stuff that's smaller is even more expensive or just as expensive as what I have. So I'm just stuck and I'm going to stay where I am. And so what's happening there is we're not creating a movement in the market. So the people that are, in the starter homes right now at maybe $500,000 and now they have a family and they want to move up, those people aren't selling. And so everybody's just kind of stuck. And so it relates to, the number of resales just show it too. I mean, there's hardly any resales. When something pops up, it's super expensive, and there's multiple bids, and then the prices just get bid up.
Right.
Is smart growth like realistic or workable? I mean, it seems like planners love smart growth. You know, let's build more urban multifamily or multi-housing units, but that consumers often want, you know, the single family home sort of out in the suburbs. And so then you're at this bypass where you can't, you know, you can't agree. I mean, do you see smart growth working in San Diego County?
Right, in some respects, yes. And I think it's a combination of both, of how the region has to grow, because there is the need for the infill, and especially if you go to downtown or the urban ring of downtown, you know, that's all smart growth, infill, and people want that urban living environment. What's changed, though, is right now we're at what we call the peak millennial. So the millennials are now entering 35, and they're starting to have family formations. And a while ago, everybody thought, well, they're going to be different. They're going to be fine living in a small 2-bedroom apartment, raising a family because they want urban. And I've never bought that theory. And the research is now showing that, hey, now that they're moving out, they're starting to move more towards the suburbs. And so the smart growth is a catalyst, and it is a good method of addressing growth for one constituency, but we've got to address the other constituency for those who want to live in the suburbs. And I'm not talking massive McMansion single-family homes as the balance. There's creative ways to do it. More of the row homes, 0 lot lines, still a little bit of a backyard, just compressed. And so we have to look for opportunities like that, because the housing preference is changing. And right now, all the growth, and especially with Sandag, you know, we flip-flopped. We went all of a sudden from 60% single-family homes. Now, for the next 35 years, we're going to develop only 18% single-family homes, and 82% of our growth is going to be this smart growth.
So how do you make that case to the people who live in these suburban North County communities that don't want any dense, you know, they don't want row houses, they don't want townhomes, they don't want, you know, 10 houses to an acre? I mean, how do you make that argument to them?
I'd be a rich man if I could figure out the right way to do it. But, you know, people, when they move into a community, unfortunately, they take a picture that day and they say, this is what I bought into. And without getting too philosophical, I mean, life is about change. It's always changing. Everybody's life is changing, and this is just part of it. And you have kids and you grow your families, it's all about change. So you have to figure out, how can we accommodate, you know, everybody here. So I don't know how you sell that to residents. Some people are just stuck on, they just don't want anything.
Doesn't that suggest that there will continue to be, for the foreseeable future, until something dramatically changes in the culture of our community and our society, pressure to go to the unincorporated area, to the, you know, the I-15 corridor, Lilac Hills, and say that's got to turn into houses at some point in time? Because isn't land and land price really probably the #1 constraint on this entire housing market?
Yes, and I think that there will always be that pressure to look for other opportunities. And, you know, every jurisdiction has some type of a general plan, but general plans are outdated the day after they come out. And the market is always so dynamic, and it's changing month to month with different housing pressures and pricing pressures and everything. So we have to be open to something outside the plan that still accomplishes the goals. You know, you mentioned Lilac Hills Ranch, and, you know, I think part of the problems with traffic studies and greenhouse gases and all that stuff is I think we're kidding ourselves if we're saying that because Lilac Hills Ranch or Newlands project doesn't exist, that people are going to find somewhere else in San Diego. The fact is, 37% of people that live in Temecula commute outside Temecula for work. So, you know, but when you talk about greenhouse gas and EIRs and all that regulation, there's no discount in traffic studies for, well, we're saving somebody from going up to Temecula. So the whole kind of system and the approval process, you know, not only is it expensive, but that's really the backlog that's creating upward pricing for housing, even for just small apartment projects too. It takes a long time, and we don't have enough units in the pipeline.
You can kind of sympathize with the people who don't want more housing, not necessarily because they just want to keep everything the same, but because traffic is just getting awful. Anyone in North County knows that traffic is now becoming unbearable. And don't you think that really to solve that, there has to be something to do with a change of attitude about how we get around as well? Because if we could solve the traffic problem, many more people would be okay with having, I think, a little bit denser community in their neighborhood.
Yeah. Absolutely. With the traffic problem, I don't see us ever getting as bad as LA for one, because I don't see us dumping a ton of homes and people in our region where we get as bad as LA, because we don't want a lot of development anyways. But the problem with San Diego is it's too convenient to get everywhere. It's really quick, and the other aspect is
You mean by car?
by car,
Well,
but
not
even
anymore.
by trolley or by rail and all that kind of transportation, it's difficult if you want to get to La Jolla or to Carlsbad or to downtown. The only real linkages are downtown and maybe UTC. Beyond that, you're gonna need a car.
You know, North County is pretty well stuck unless you live close to the Sprinter line and you want to go east-west.
Right.
I mean,
Or
there's the
you wanna go
Sprinter, there's the
down the
Coaster,
coast.
and there are bus services, but as you say, the connections are not so good. So, I mean, I know the London group is very much saying we need to expand out, but there are other people who say, well, really we need to look at how we can fill in. There are a lot of spaces in the urban areas that could be filled in if we could solve a little bit the traffic situation. It's a conundrum.
Yeah, and we can, but it also comes to housing product type. So if you can't get the type of housing you want, they're gonna look for somewhere else, which is why Temecula was created. I mean, they couldn't find the housing they wanted, so people were willing to drive.
Well, I know many people in our newsroom who are millennials in this situation who say that these new townhouses are perhaps the solution. They're not like a single-family home with a big yard, but nor are they apartments. So, you know, townhome seems to be kind of the middle way that is solving the problem for some
Absolutely,
families.
and it's affordable.
But isn't that the row house model that you're talking about that's in Baltimore and lots of cities back east?
Yes, and City of San Marcos, on their Creekside project, they're really starting to take a look at that and be very proactive. And they're a great North County city that's trying to take a proactive approach on that regard.
I think the transportation issue is interesting too, because like a lot of people oppose the expansion of the 5, fearing that it'll bring even more people here. So they're not necessarily looking for a solution to the traffic problem to accommodate more housing. They're looking at the traffic problem as a way to keep out more housing.
And then just
You know what I
complaining
mean?
about the prices going up, where if we keep saying no to everything, the prices are just going to keep on going up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, although you're not giving them a big incentive when you say it's impossible, not impossible, but it would take so many more housing units to affect price. That to me, does that like undermine an argument to people that they should allow more housing? Because to a lot of people, they're like, well, it's not going to make the homes more affordable. Why should we? You know, what's the tipping
Yes.
point there? Like,
Right, I
do
mean,
you
at
have
some
one?
point, you at least have to try. I mean,
Okay.
I'm wondering where I'm gonna house my 8-year-old daughter. I mean, so even if it is expensive, I still wanna keep adding some housing opportunities because we need it
'Cause
for
there's no
everybody in
other
the
option.
region. Yeah.
Am I right that in terms of new housing construction, unit construction added, say, over the last decade, that it has pretty well consistently been fewer than 10,000 units a year
Oh,
in the
yes.
county? What do we need each year going out to satisfy housing demand on our natural population growth over the next 10 years or 15 or some time period?
I'd say around 12,000 to 13,000 housing units a year. for
So
the next-
every year, we're going to be at least 2 or 3, 4,000 units short.
Yes,
Just making it worse and worse.
Yes.
Under current projections. It's kind of a bleak prognosis, isn't it? Unless you happen to own your house already, and I guess then you sit back and say, oh, I'm going to get rich maybe someday.
Well,
You're joking, but I mean, I tell people if I had money to invest, I would be buying every single home, single-family home I can in North County as close to the water as possible along the 5, because that's going to be highly desirable, and we're not building anymore, and we're not building any more single-family homes, and that would be a great investment to do, unfortunately.
Don't you feel like there is a bit of a tipping point? I don't know how much time we have.
1 minute.
Okay. The attitude this year really feels like there's a sort of a change. All the politicians that got elected are now saying that housing and homelessness is one of their top priorities. The governor is really getting serious. I mean, don't you feel like maybe some more policy changes might come down the pike this year that would help us to break the logjam?
I do think so. I think in the last 6 months, I've heard a lot in the news, in the media, and different politicians finally taking a stand and knowing and acknowledging that we need to address the price of housing, not affordable housing, but the price of housing. And so, you know, I'm hopeful that we'll see some change in that regard.
Well, we'll join you in that hope.
Hopeful
Thank
note.
you. Thank you very much, Nathan, for being on the show with us tonight.